Hey, this is Voo, and today we're going to take a look at a game here from FishBucket44, who is Silver Elite Master, and he says he's not sure he even belongs in Silver Elite Master. He might deserve a D rank, and unfortunately, he might be right. Before we go any further, I want to thank the sponsor for this video, Leadify. Leadify is an AI coach that allows you to improve faster by analyzing your Face-It or matchmaking games and giving you insight into your weaknesses as well as personalized training. Leadify has also implemented a team finder area on their website that will match you based on your skill level, schedule, and ambition, so you can find like-minded players outside of my YouTube comments. Whether you're beginner, intermediate, advanced, or you're a professional player watching my videos trying to be as good as me, Leadify is the app for you. It's also free to use, so give a click to the link in the description and head on over to leadify.com. So we'll take a look at a few rounds here from FishBucket44, but I want you guys to be a little bit easy on him. This is not a player who says he's in ELO hell, and he is clearly a beginner level player, so I'm going to try and tailor the advice specifically to players that aren't able to execute the high level plays that they might want to. So to start off here, FishBucket is going to make his way down Fast Cat, and he's going to try and throw an Xbox smoke, which he unfortunately misses about 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 times this game in different ways, which is pretty unfortunate, we'll say. Then he's going to make his way over to long, a little bit delayed. And one thing you want to keep in mind, he may be a bit confused because he had a teammate there a second ago, but if we stop, you're going to notice there are 4 players going cat, and he is solo out long. And as a general rule, if you're going for a site split, the side with less players typically wants to be more passive, and that means the player here solo on long, FishBucket, he wants to be trying to bait his team a little bit, draw this player corner over towards platform to help his teammate, and then you shoot him in the side and you give him a player to worry about from long corner instead of having this player deal with him here. Now, you can draw a player into pit. You've actually done a pretty good solid job as long as you can survive, because now his player on plat has no support, but FishBucket does hit a nice shot. His team gets into a 4v1, and immediately you can tell, though, that he struggles a little bit because he simply hasn't played the game enough. A lot of the things he's doing, you can see the ideas are there, but they're simply too clunky and not executed correctly. And you can see even in this 2v1, he's trying to catch this player out in the open, and he successfully does so, but his aim and movement aren't quick enough to actually dodge the shot once he's taken and missed his own shot himself. I have a video on this topic actually, and it doesn't really matter how much information you know about the game unless you have the experience and the mechanics to actually execute it somewhat fluidly. And this is a problem a lot of people have when they watch a bunch of different YouTubers. They learn set smokes and they learn concepts about the game, but then they struggle to actually execute it or implement it in a reasonable manner. And you could definitely see that in the last round, and you can see that in this round as well. I mean, look how poorly he's kicking the soccer ball. That's pathetic. But as he makes his way over to B, he knows he wants to smoke the molly off here and then flash into B, but you can see how long this takes him. And it's not that he has the wrong idea entirely. Smoking the molly and flashing through the smoke is a good idea. It's just the timings there are 5 or 10 seconds off. Optimally, what you want is you want one player smoking the molly, another player flashing to the left, and maybe another player later in the push flashing over to support. That makes this really crisp, where you come through the smoke the moment you put out the molly, and your opponents don't have any time to react. However, what FishBucket did there is he smoked it, then he flashed again, then he led out the push. And that's simply not a very good situation to put yourself in. It's not going to have any consistent success. In fact, it would be much better to dumb it down a little bit and lose one of the flashes or wait out the molly instead of smoking it off to find a better timing rather than a technically better play that you can't execute correctly. Okay, so play the game more. Thanks, Voo. Not obvious at all, lol. Well, yeah, but, you know, so many people don't do it that I do feel it necessary. It is very important. An ocean of information will not make you a great player if you can't execute it, and until you play the game enough, you won't be able to execute it. Another problem that he has that is honestly baffling to me for someone that does seem to know a good amount of fundamentals, I would think, in terms of just, you know, thinking about the game. 14 of 25 rounds in this game, he has a bad buy. and this is one of them. He goes Mac 10 body armor, no utility, Tech 9, no head armor. And then he goes long. This checks all of the boxes for things you should absolutely not be doing, including jumping out long with the Mac 10 alone and fighting someone. Here's the thing with the Mac 10. The Mac 10 is actually a very strong gun. I've talked about this before. The problem is it's really good when you have an idea of what you're planning to do. If you're planning on going quickly up cat or you're planning on going out middle. Unfortunately, Dust 2, probably one of the worst maps for a Mac 10 because most sites other than B, so unless you're going for a B rush, are going to have a lot of long range angles you're forced to engage at, and long, hence the name, is one of the longer of the engagements. There is no close range for you to get with that Mac 10 to take good engagements with the Mac 10. You would quite literally be better off having a Deagle than a Mac 10 in this type of situation, or optimally, a Galil. You know, so it's, I mean, or an AK, or an AWP, if you can afford it, but more likely a Galil. I'm starting to think he, unfortunately, may have been right. You're going to notice that he has clearly learned some utility, but hasn't actually learned it. So he learns the flash there that you can take to run out long, throws it in not the right situation, which I can forgive, but then he comes over and throws this smoke incorrectly. This isn't where you're supposed to throw the smoke from. You actually throw the smoke from the same area, but the other side of the wall. And so the smoke is going to land nowhere. And then he's unfortunately going to run back and along into a player. I would generally recommend go into a server, practice the utility in your own empty server before you use it in game. Just find out and make sure it lands, because if it's not landing, you're wasting your money. And the thing is, if you're playing a bunch of different maps, if you're not Dust 2 only, unless you actually get the muscle memory of having gone in and thrown the smoke a few times, you will forget the utility you learned before you even actually use it. Also, generally throwing utility for yourself isn't the greatest, especially when you throw it from so far away from the angle you want to fight at. All right, so we've got the third or fourth Mac 10 here coming out of Fish Bucket, and finally we have him doing it in the right situation. His team has a B spawn, he can take it B. This is the situation I would actually recommend getting a Mac 10. Sometimes on certain scenarios, you can even get a Mac 10 over a rifle. I wouldn't say on Dust 2 you'd want to be doing that, maybe on something like a B rush with the get right, get left smokes on Mirage. If you're the first player in the rush, you can literally buy a Mac 10 instead of an AK. In a B rush on Dust 2, I would prefer the AK, but it's not the end of the world. You know, it does make some... He's going long. Probably should have bought an AK. Certainly, if he was first out, it would make the most sense to have a Mac 10, even if you're going long. I mean, it wouldn't make sense, but it would make the most sense. If you're last, you almost never want a Mac 10, because a Mac 10 is a run and gun. You want to go out first with it and close the distance. You don't want to be trying to support your teammates with it from range. He will end up into long here, and again, you don't want to give away information for free. You probably with a Mac 10 want to be going with your teammates, but also if you're going to be lurking long here, lurk. Don't give away information for free. Don't let someone that's playing long, and there should be a player in pit here for the CTs, know that you're coming, because if they know you're coming, they're going to have a pretty big advantage and just destroy you. That being said, if they don't have anybody in pit, that does work out a little bit. All right, so for the last round, I'm going to look at on the T side here. We're going to look at round 7. Again, he's going to miss this smoke by throwing it in front of him. Unfortunate. He was kind of getting blocked there. I'll give him a break, but unfortunately his teammates seem to have missed the same smoke. But you're going to notice he runs out middle here and doesn't check the close right corner. Little bit confusing. However, he does eventually get the kill, and you're going to notice, actually, he does a pretty good job. When he's got a rifle in hand, this is the thing about Fish Bucket that is unfortunate. It looks like he might have actually spent some time doing stuff like aimbots or deathmatching, because when he's shooting at an opponent, his aim seems passable. It certainly seems better than the majority of the other things he's doing. And so when he buys an AK, And when he gets into a decent gunfight where he's not at a massive disadvantage, and it's pretty rare for both of those things to have happened together, unfortunately, he actually does do a good job of actually killing his opponent. At least I would say it's pretty good for his rank. So I can see why he's probably in this rank, where he's probably played a good amount of games where his opponents give him these type of engagements and he wins them. And especially games where he doesn't start out at a massive disadvantage and have to buy a MAC-10 a bunch of times in a row. Instead, if he starts out the game by winning rounds, he does buy an AK. It's when he's losing rounds that he forces a MAC-10 over and over and over and over. Please learn to save. But you can see there, his mechanics are okay. If I was to guess, I would say that Fishbucket has put in a large amount of time to deathmatch and aimbots and watching YouTube, and put in a very minimal amount of time to actually grinding out games of matchmaking where he's clearly got a large amount of deficiencies. Now, the reason I showed that round on T side where he didn't clear the angle is because he goes to the same angle himself on his own CT side. And I feel like one of the most obvious things to understand is if an angle is good for you on your CT side, then you probably want to consider how you deal with it on your T side. If you're going to play there on CT, surely you have to clear that on your T side. And I know what everyone's saying. Voo, he didn't clear it once, he was distracted. No, he didn't just not clear it once. He did it again later in the half, even though he got punished for not kind of punished for not clearing it the first time. Guys, if an angle is something you like playing on your CT side, think to yourself, how do I get countered when I play this angle? Find that answer and use that against your opponent. It's actually one of the easiest ways to learn how to deal with something, and that's why I recommend for newer players to play a variety of different positions on their CT side. Get good at them. Don't just play it for one round and then move, but get good at that spot, and you'll then understand how to counter other people when they're playing that spot. I will say that similarly to his T side, Fishbucket really enjoys SMGs on his CT side as well. And unfortunately, he also enjoys not throwing utility all that well. Now, the thing is, people are going to say, and the standard thing to say here is just don't throw utility lol. Just keep your gun out and fight them. And that is true. He certainly, these flashes are worse than if he had just thrown one of them, or his teammate had thrown one, or even if he had just swung with his teammate at the beginning of the round. He would have probably had a better outcome. However, a reality that was actually pointed out to me in a YouTube comment, one of the only things I've learned from a YouTube comment, was that unless newer players actually use nades, they're never going to get good with them. So simply not using utility because you suck with it isn't actually the greatest solution, and it's a solution that's kind of a band-aid. Eventually, you're going to need to learn utility in order to be good at the game. If you can't do that, then you're simply never going to be good. So Fishbucket, I don't recommend he stops using utility altogether. Just watch back your own games and take a look at how your utility is actually working and try and crisp it up so you're only throwing one flash and you're trying to peek off of it. A flash is only going to blind people for a second or two before they end up behind cover if they're full whited, which means you don't really need to throw two flashes, and you don't want to throw two flashes, wait, and then peek. You need to throw usually one flash and immediately peek off of it to actually capitalize. Also, even with SMGs, you still don't want to spray at really long range. Now, the final note I want to leave on here is that when Fishbucket takes decent engagements, he actually does pretty well. And I mentioned that on the T side. You're going to notice this on the CT side as well. He's going to end up in car here, which, you know, isn't the greatest position. His opponents are going to miss the molly, though, which does kind of save him here. And then he's going to give his position away. Wouldn't really recommend it. If they think they mollied you out, you should just let them think they mollied you out instead of throwing a flash. But eventually they're going to cross over. He's going to hit a nice shot. He's going to swing out, and I wouldn't be swinging there. However, he gets a second kill as well. Again, his mechanics seem to be on point. He just overcomplicates everything. In fact, I'll say I'm not sure Fishbucket does deserve Silver Elite Master from the gameplay we're seeing here in its totality. However, mechanically, I think he could even rank up if he could do the things surrounding his mechanics to a competent level. So over time, if Fishbucket just grinds out the game, I think he'll do pretty well. Let's hope he does that. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope this helped, and I'll see you next time.